Okay, guys. I finally developed the diagram that I think is going to clarify everything from today. So I'll save this on the drive, but I think it would help every single one of you to literally handwrite it or draw it up on your computer, however you want to do it, yourselves. This is how it works, and I'll show you with associated test renders that show you the conditions and restrictions of each of these setups. So basically, what we want our lights to do is to show light and to control light. That's basically it. Show light, control light. So basically, in order to show the light, it needs to be material capable. And in order to control the light, it needs to tilt the light or, change the cone angle or, whatever the case is. But the most important ones are tilt angle and cone angle, because certain hosts are going to restrict you from using that. So basically, you have two primary light types that we're studying in this diagram right now. We have omni-lights and we have spotlights. And then we have two host types that we're looking at right now, and those are going to be surface or planar hosts that you model in Rhino, and Rhino light family hosts. So you've seen those in the previous videos. I'll show you them in the model again if you need to see it. But anyway, let's start off in the top left corner and let's look at omni-lights. It's not advisable to use an omni-light family on Rhino light families unless it is a Rhino omni-light. In which case you might not even need to do that, and you could just use an omni-light on a sphere, something like that. But that's up to you to control that. But anyway, we don't really need to study that one that much because it shines light in all directions. All you have to do is just change the material that's associated with it. But the surface and planar one is really important to understand. So as you're going through and troubleshooting what type of light to use in your environment, you probably will start with omni-lights because they're easy. It's just light that shines everywhere. And in the test render, what you look at, let's look at this one. So this is two omni-lights that have been set up in the space. They have similar light properties. This is the spot emitter family, I think it was. And the thing that I want to, and it is set to Omni. Okay, that's the one that's set to Omni. If you look at my model, this is the Omni, and that's the spot family or spot emitter. So what it does, if you set it to Omni, it will allow you to A, apply a material, which it's done, so it shines light, and B, change the tilt angle of the light. So that's why you see it shining on the wall. However, if you look very carefully over here, on the left-hand side, you have a straight line on that wall. That's a very significant discovery, because what that means is your light is actually shining at exactly 180 degrees from that light source, no matter how you tilt it. Like it's literally just spreading light all the way up to the ceiling as far as it possibly can. So that's what that hard line is. It's a very sort of unnatural line. It's not common, but it does happen from time to time. But you do need to know that that's a restriction. Going back into the diagram again, we're going to switch into spotlights, which are probably what we're going to spend most of our time working with, and we're going to either host them on surface or planar materials, or we're going to host them in Rhino light families. The downside of surface planar materials is that you really only get to apply the material. You don't have the option to tilt the material, and you don't have the option to control the cone angle of that material very well, except for just having the material options that you play with. So that example looks like this. So yeah, you can play with the cone angle, but it's always just going to be the material-based cone angle. Can't really see much of it in the actual one. Let's see if I can brighten it up for you. There you go. So that looks like this. Yes, you can change. I probably should revise that. Yes, you can change the cone angle, but you cannot change the tilt angle. So let's do that right now. Boop. All right. So that is the primary restriction of using spotlights on surface and planar materials. Now, if you use a spotlight on a Rhino light family, It's a little different. It actually allows you to change the material, the tilt angle, and the cone angle, utilizing just the material properties and where you have the family actually showing. And that example is shown here. And I've actually shown you two of them. One of them is when it's left as a Rhino light, and then the other one actually has the material applied to it. So that's probably the most important takeaway of that, is that even when you use a Rhino light family, if you don't apply a material to it, it will still create light. Yes?
When you say Rhino light, what do you mean?
A Rhino light is these. So it's anything you see on these bars. They come in omnis, spotlights, bar lights, area lights, etc. So anyway, that is an important distinction, because now you can modify your Rhino light using multi-light, which is interesting. You know, if you like using Rhino lights and you're used to it, you can still do that, but they're not as easy to control. You know, your fall off angle or anything like that. That relates to the other lights in the space. Okay. So I think that is a really clear delineation of which types of lights to use for what conditions. So in my opinion, unless you have a very distinct advantage to using a surface or planar host, for the most part, you probably want to use a Rhino light host. You know, if you're trying to do like spots and things that tilt, you probably want to use the Rhino light host. But if you're just using like your cove lights and your cans, because they're just little discs that sit inside of it, you should probably just, I mean, it's probably easier for you from a modeling perspective to just model that disc and throw on a spotlight family on your surface or planar host. Is that a good summation of everything that we've troubleshot today? Okay. Now that I have this, I'm really glad I developed this, because now I should never forget this in the future, going forward in future classes. But I will say, I mean, if you think that you can just like play around with it for a little bit and then put it down and then come back to it a few weeks later and remember it, you won't. It's really complicated. So write yourself little diagrams like this to help you remember what to use on what.